new to the anchor system, yeah?
I am.
Okay, okay, cool. So is this your topic that you clicked on or somebody else's topic? Is the topic of thrifting interesting for you, or how did you get to this?
I actually put in the topic, so I thought it
Okay,
might be
so
something interesting. I'm trying to decide exactly what it is if I want to do this and what would be interesting. So,
okay, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. I mean, I think everybody starts like that. Everybody explores and they see if if you can use it, you use it, and if you don't, you move on, basically, like that. So
exactly.
so are you ready to have a discussion for 10, 15 minutes about the topic? Yeah? We can talk a
Yeah,
little bit.
I have about 10 minutes probably.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. So, can you explain what thrifting means to you? Can you explain what it is from your perspective?
Well, from my perspective, it's basically finding great deals, going out and finding something that speaks to you, that's different from everybody else, but also getting a great deal on it. Lots of people call it thrifting or church
Hmm.
basements, and I think there's a lot of people also who look down at it because
Hmm.
you're not paying that high ticket price, but you're
Hmm.
getting something that is different and unique at the same time.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, did you say church basement? What kind of basement?
Yeah.
Church basement.
Well, depending, yeah, exactly. Depending, I guess, where you live in the world, um, it can be sometimes things that are given to the community. So they often find themselves working out of church basements, which are kind of places that don't cost money for people. So they come to the aid of the community. So whatever monies are collected are given over back to the community to help out the community. So they're not charged rent or anything like that. So they can work out of those specific areas.
Oh yeah, so it's a way for people to save money, basically. I mean, that's
Exactly.
that's
Yeah.
what we're talking about. Yeah, okay, okay, that's a new term for me, so that's pretty cool to learn something new. It makes me think about. I spent many years in Britain, and they have something in Britain called car boot sales, right? Where I don't know if you know what that is. You know what a car boot sale
I
is?
have actually, yeah, I have actually heard of it. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but
So
yeah,
everybody drives to a big car park, and they take the junk from the house that they don't want. They put it in the back of the car, and they just open up the back of the car, and people walk around and look at other people's junk.
exactly. That's kind of what we hear where I am in Canada, kind of referred
Mhm.
to as either yard sales or
Mhm.
um, garage sales, also known as it, where it's more for the person selling
Mhm.
that makes the money, as opposed
Yeah.
to what we call thrifting. Is basically there's two versions of it. You have either the ones which, like I said, are more community based located. So the people who work there are volunteers. All the clothes or the furniture or everything that's given over, whatever is sold, the money goes back to the community to help out the community in
Mhm.
whatever way. Or you also have people who open thrift shops who go out and buy either vintage clothing, vintage um, furniture, so on and so forth, and they
Mhm.
rent out a space and sell it at a higher price for profit. So you do have both of those. Um,
Yes. So is that something like an antique shop then, basically? Is that what we're?
it can be a little bit, but when it comes to thrifting, most people refer to it more so for clothing and sometimes
Mhm.
furniture and so on. And it doesn't necessarily have to be antique or vintage, but especially in clothing, vintage is anything that's, let's say, about 15 years old, 10 to
Mhm.
15 years old. So if you have, like,
Mhm.
example, a name brand, I don't know, example, Tommy Hilfiger from
Mhm.
15 years ago, it's
Mhm.
considered a vintage piece. It might be some dead stock. It might be something that someone had and never used or very wore very lightly. So
Mhm.
even though that brand still sells today for a very high price, you might find an
Mhm.
older piece. It's
Mhm.
considered a vintage piece, so you can sell it at quite a high resale sometimes if you find the right buyer.
Wow, there's a whole kind of branding element to this, yeah, that I'm picking up. Sort of the idea of vintage, it's like we use vintage rather than old because vintage suggests higher value, yeah. And
Exactly.
and the idea of dead stock, that's another new term for me today. You're giving me a lot of new stuff, which is really interesting, which is what I think sort of hopefully podcast is about, right? It's like learning something new from the people out there. So that's
Absolutely. And I think
that.
that exactly thrifting, like I said in the beginning, is looked down on a lot by a lot of people because it's something that people with, let's say, not the usual means tend to do. Like I grew up not necessarily very poor, but let's say lower middle class, where I wanted all the name brands and everything that everybody else was wearing to school, but I couldn't necessarily afford it. So these places allowed me to shop and sometimes find um, things that maybe were on trend, but at the same time, because there's a lot of older pieces, or it's not like a store where you say, oh, I like that, and they have your size. You might like it and it might not fit you. So it does permit you to kind of create also your own unique type of style at a much lesser cost. So it allows you kind of two things, perhaps sometimes to more fit in, because I think we all want to fit in a little bit, especially
Yeah,
growing up.
sure.
And secondly, to develop your own kind of unique sense of style as well.
Hmm. Wow. So what we're saying here is that you can kind of repurpose what is out there. Yeah, you can take it and you can sort of rebrand it in your own style in a certain sense. And
Exactly. Make it your own, whether it
yeah,
be,
yeah,
cropping
great.
it or,
Yeah, that's a
just
great idea. Make it your own. That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. You make it your own, and then you own it, and then you're developing your own way of doing things as well. And I think that it's interesting to realize that one person's junk can be another person's treasure. Basically, we all have these different.
absolutely, absolutely. And
We
especially in the fashion aspect of it,
Mhm.
um, a lot of people go, well, for most people, we buy what we want to see. We buy what we're told. This is what you should wear. This is what's fashionable. And these types of places kind of allow you to develop your own sense of style, to be yourself. You're gonna try on something
Mhm.
that you might not see because you're like, oh, maybe it'll look nice, or you'll find a different way of wearing it, or you'll turn that shirt into a dress because it works well for you. You learn
Mhm.
colors, you learn shapes, things that you don't always have a chance to do in a society that basically tells you this is what's fashionable, you have to wear
Mhm.
this, and if you don't wear this, you can't be one of us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it also teaches you elements of financial awareness. It teaches you an understanding of what the world is like around about you. It'll teach you, it'll maybe give you a good sense of values because you'll learn who respects you for being just you, right? And who's not respecting you because they're only interested in the image that you project perhaps through the fashions that you wear or something like, or so. Yeah. I think it's a fascinating topic, and I think that as people, we tend to collect things. I think that all people in general, I say all people, most people, okay, not everybody, but most people tend to collect one thing or another. They have interests and they invest their time and their energy and their money in those things that are interesting for them. And they tend to collect things, whether it be books or plants or I don't know, car parts or pictures or I don't know, whatever, right?
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, it does. Same thing for this too. It does become somewhat of a collection or an addiction. I even found myself, I've been doing this type of thing, oh my
mhm.
goodness, let's say for 30 years almost now. And um,
Wow.
I don't think I don't even think in all my whole wardrobe, whether it be shoes or, clothes or anything of the sort, that I own one thing that actually comes from a store. I think the last time I went and bought something in a store for myself was over 10 years ago, just because I don't see the need in spending
Oh
that
yeah.
$50 on a t-shirt when I could get one that nobody else has, most likely, for,
Mhm.
let's say, $5.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can. It's kind of crazy. You can go to the local mall where I live, and you can spend 200 euro on a t-shirt, and that's just for me is kind of mind blowing because that can feed a family for a month, right? and,
Absolutely. And you're thinking that that 200 euros that you put on that t-shirt, someone else can have that exact same t-shirt.
oh yeah, imagine the
So
horror,
you're not an
right?
individual, you're just following what everybody else is saying is,
Mhm.
acceptable and fashionable.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's having a true set of values, which I think is really important. And I've known people who have spent like a crazy what was it? They spent like 600 to 700 euro on a pair of trainers. I think the Americans call them sneakers. I'm not sure.
Right,
And,
sneakers,
I'm,
shoes, yeah.
yeah, and I will think I will debate with myself over spending 30 to 40 euros. Okay, and I'll be like, how much am I going to use it, and is it going to be worth? Am I going to get the value out of it, and is it practical for me
Absolutely.
right now to spend my money on that kind of thing? And uh, and and so I think for some people have lost their sense of value. Some people have this. I don't know quite where it comes from. I guess they have some kind of sheltered upbringing in some kind of way. I mean, I don't like
And I think it also becomes to the want and need, right? We
hmm
all want to belong. And if someone tells us, if you wear this,
hmm
you belong. I'm not sure if it's like that everywhere, but, growing up and going to school, there was always, you want to fit in. So if
yeah, yeah.
that person was wearing that brand and you could get that brand, you automatically fit in. But if you didn't and you stood out, you were the outcast. So it was more difficult to get accepted.
Yeah, yeah. The tribe has its rules, and people want to fit in. They need to belong. They need to belong to different groups. And you mentioned want and need. I mean that's a really important element of basic understanding that people need to realize the difference between what you want might not be what you need. So you got to get
Exactly.
your values
I need
right
a
in.
pair of shoes, but I want the Chanel shoes. Well,
Yeah, 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 exactly. Where does there's somewhere there's a line, and on one side it's practical, on the other side it's not, and you've got to be able to decide where that line is. And another thing that you mentioned, I think that's really important, is this. You mentioned collection and addiction, and I think it's an interesting idea that at some point, collecting, there's nothing wrong with collecting things. We all like to surround ourselves with comfortable, nice objects, that's for sure. And I'm the same as everybody else in that area. But at some point, you cross over the line and collection becomes addiction, right? So you kind of
absolutely.
have to be careful. Hey, we've got about 1 minute left. This has been a really fascinating chat for me. I would just want to say thank you very much for introducing me to the subject here, because
Well, it was an absolute pleasure, and it was truly a great first experience, which hopefully I will start my own podcast, and it would be great to have you on as a guest, and we can talk about anything else.
yeah, that would be great. I mean, the great thing about the Anchor system is hopefully after the first contact, people can keep in touch. You can reach me through my name, Graham W. Hendrey. You can reach me through that on Anchor, and you can contact me on Facebook if you're on there. I have 2 podcasts, Chatterbox and Business Coaching Masterclass. So it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and I
Same
wish you all
here.
success in the future.